I hope you're happy, Brad.
Always.
Last week.
Never.
Yeah, never's right. For all of us right now. Last week, we talked about desks, and I was ashamed of my situation. So I took 3 days.
3 days?
Well, first I had to clean out the drawers beside my desk.
3 days?
So that I had room to put the shit from my desk someplace.
That's fair. Also, I'm not, I don't want to preemptively throw any shade here, but that printer table behind you there, it seems like the cone of cleaning did not extend all the way across the room.
Look, it made it up until the wood part, right?
Okay.
The wood is, the past the wood is a dumping ground. So, first I had to clean off the shelves. Then I had to clean off the desk surface, and then I unplugged everything, took all the monitors off, all the speaker, everything came off the desk.
Wow.
I cleaned it all. I rewired everything. I bought a bigger power strip, so I only have one power strip under there for each computer now.
You made an investment in your own sanity.
I hold on, I'm not done. I got wire baskets on the advice of people in the Discord that I screwed into the bottom of my desk, and now the power strips don't live there yet because I need one more basket, but the cables and like my audio interface and my switcher, my hardware switcher between the two computers, all that stuff, everything that I don't need to touch on the day-to-day lives in that basket.
Suspended in the air.
My wires go straight back. There's little cable drop hooks at the end of those wires, so they hold them in place, but I can get them out easily if I need to.
Excellent. Have you achieved the real question though? Have you achieved true desk nirvana? Tidiness nirvana, and cleared the floor under the desk?
There are 2 power strips and some cables under there.
That's right. The power strips. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I got to get the baskets. Yeah.
True joy, ultimate purity.
It was really nice for about 20 minutes, and now it's already a little messed up again.
Well, I get it. But the ultimate purity here is to be able to push a vacuum right under your desk and just vacuum.
I'm not worried. I have a little foot thing under there, so I can't ever do that.
Whatever. As long as you don't eat up any cables with a vacuum, then you've made it.
So I bought foot pedals last year for I thought I was going to use them for leaning in PUBG, so I could lean without moving my fingers off the movement keys.
I figured you were going to say you were getting into iRacing or something, but I never considered using your feet as just generic inputs.
Yeah. But I think I'm going to use them for push to talk and push to mute.
Well, that's not the worst idea.
Yeah. It's so I might screw them into my footrest, my little tilty footrest thing.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
The desk student has become the master, I see.
Well, look, I get a little weird about stuff. The problem I have with the foot thing is that I have hardwood and it slides. So I feel like both my chair, I'm always kind of floating, right? I'm always if I lean back too far, I can slide around. It's not great.
I bought 202 rubber feet from Amazon for $6.99 or something. So
do you know about the nano bubble sticky material?
What?
Oh, hello. I'm about to change your life.
I'm typing nano bubble into Google as we speak.
So I'm holding up the camera, but you can get this stuff that looks like double-sided foam, and one side is just normal 3M sticky stuff.
Okay.
And wrong camera. And then the other side is this, it has micro bubbles on it, nano-sized bubbles on it. So if you're on any kind of smooth surface, it'll suction onto it and is on, I would say, surprisingly well.
I'm scrolling their website and reading about brownie in motion and neutral buoyancy right now. So
who is this?
Does it actually cling? Will it actually defy gravity?
So I have stuck an iPad mini on the front of a cabinet as they advertised.
Wow.
I don't think it'll go upside down, but it'll do vertical. It'll do surfaces. It's great for I have my mouse wrist rest and my keyboard wrist rest stuck down with that stuff, because then I can peel them up and it re-sticks. What else did I do? A lot of the cable drop things are there, like my little switch for the hardware USB switcher is on that. My Stream Deck is stuck down with that stuff. My microphone, my headphone amp, all that stuff is stuck down with that stuff. I love that stuff. It's really good.
Did you know the aeration industry expert Michael Stenstrom said that the company's nano bubble generators provide the highest oxygen transfer efficiency of any aeration technology he has tested so far?
Oh no, that's different. That's not the stuff we're talking about.
Oh no.
No, that's a different
type of nano bubbles. Okay,
I think it's nano suction tape is what you're looking for.
I clicked the first link that came up when I typed nano bubble in.
So
nano suction.
Yeah, Sewell.
Aha.
air fused nano microfilm suction plates. You get from Amazon for like a sheet for $15.
Slightly less exotic as material science goes.
I'm sorry. It's still nano though. That's good, right?
That's smaller the better.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. Will, I don't know that we have ever struggled so much to come up with a topic as we did this week.
This has been a challenging week on a lot of fronts. None related to the Tech Pod. As always, Tech Pod and Tech Pod related interactions have been a source of brightness and joy in an otherwise grim time.
This podcast exists within a bubble of positivity.
Yeah, it's funny. I was a friend of mine on Twitter this morning was like, I think people are probably willing to pay for mediated social networks that don't have all of the horrible things that are on the big social networks. And I was like, yeah, I have actual, like proof of that. People are paying to hang out in our Discord with other like-minded individuals.
That's
right now.
That's right.
And share things about their hobbies and business.
I've seen a similar effect on certain forums that charge for posting access. Kind of self-selecting for better conversation.
Yeah, it turns
and so
out.
Forth, stuff like that, yeah.
Who knew?
Yes.
This week, we thought after a great deal of conversation, some feedback from the folks in the Discord, we thought a retrospective, a nostalgia trip might be in order.
Yeah.
And welcome.
Just I happened to click on a website earlier that I realized has been around for well over 2 decades at this point.
Yeah.
That I've been going to for pretty much that entire time. And I was just like, you know what? This internet thing's kind of getting a little long in the tooth.
My first my first job writing was for Ars Technica, which now has been around for 21 or 22 years, depending on what they started in the summer of 98.
Man, I was expecting this podcast to be all warm and fuzzy and full of nostalgia, but if it's just going to remind us of our mortality, it's just maybe not working as intended.
Well, I was going to say the thing that was funny was I think our tagline was something about covering technology for 2 times 10 to the negative 2 years or something like that. But we messed up the exponential for a really long time and nobody noticed.
Nobody did?
No, nobody did.
That seems like something that somebody would check the math on instantly.
Well, it was harder to give direct feedback back then. You had to open an email client or something.
That's fair. Yeah. I don't know. As we were trying to think of topics, at some point it was just like, reminiscing about the good old days is a good, fun, warm, fuzzy thing that everybody can feel good about at a time when nothing else feels very good. So let's just deliver 45 minutes of escapism here.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. And I mean, it feels good for us too. So that works for everybody. But we've kind of hinted on this a little bit, but I thought first time on the internet was a good idea.
Yeah.
Like what it was like on the internet when we started, because it's a dramatically different time. And you and I are just different enough in age that like my guess is that your first time on the internet and my first time on the internet were pretty different.
Yes, I would say it's based on your talk about owning a Wang and stuff like that. You definitely have a few years on me.
If you want to talk about the Wang, that's a different show. That's for patrons only.
That's fair. I know we've hinted around this stuff a little bit, like when we talked about building PCs back in the day, and like when we ranked the Windowses and some stuff like that. I know that like kind of early internet access has come up a little bit here and there. Like for whatever reason, the words trumpet windsock want to tumble out of my mouth as a way to kick this off.
Oh, see, I was way before.
I was going to say,
before that. Yeah,
but that's probably even late for you.
So I got internet access when I went to college in the fall of '93, which makes me part of the dark. Like I was part of the people that destroyed the internet the very first time, is my understanding.
The Eternal September.
Eternal September. Yeah,
you were one of them.
I was one of those kids.
Wow. And we should. I don't know how hard this would be. But we should find somebody who was on the other side of that. One of the old school grognards.
I know people who can do that, who can have that conversation. Yeah.
How old? What's the age range we're talking here?
Like 3 years older than me would have been.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was envisioning somebody who was like a gray bearded sysop even then.
I'm
somebody who was like helping like co-developing Unix in the 70s or something.
Well, so it's funny. The people that I know now that were on the other side of that were basically, it's the normal early internet exclusioning bullshit where I am 6 months cooler than you, so you can get fucked, sir.
I was here before you. I know about all the cool stuff that you'll never understand.
Yes, exactly. I was here when it was good, not when your alt.binaries.barney.die.die.die was the hot new news group. Nerd.
Does that still exist?
I hope so, but
I'm sure we will talk about Usenet. But thank you to Google, somewhat sincerely, somewhat ironically, for archiving the whole of Usenet.
Yeah, right. I mean, so I got a Vax login because I wasn't a CS student. If you wanted a Unix login when I started at Vanderbilt my freshman year, you had to be a CS student. So I got a Vax login, and I was excited because I could send theoretically these electronic mails to my high school friends who were at other schools.
Okay, this is how I know we've talked about this before, because Vax is VACS, right? Not VAX.
No, VAX.
Oh, okay.
It's a DEC thing.
Okay.
I think it's like a mainframey type timeshare, time slice computer.
Got it.
It's all terminal access.
Okay.
So you got a Vax login. My Wang 386SX25, no math coprocessor, had a modem, had a 14.4 modem. So I used that to dial into the terminal. And this was before the web. So there was at this time, I mean, I guess it wasn't technically before the web.
I guess the web was like being created around that time, right? 90,
yeah, like
what was it, 92,
Lynx was new,
I think?
maybe. I didn't use Lynx for a really long time from this point. So the first 2 years of my internet access were all shell based.
Okay.
It wasn't until 1995 that I got a SLIP or PPP login.
So that's what I was going to ask, what kind of connection that was. I mean, it was literally just a serial console, and that was
just a serial console over a modem.
Okay.
And like you'd get this login, and then there was no documentation or anything, and we didn't have the internet you couldn't Google the documentation. So basically I would open up the console and type help, and it was like figuring out the best text adventure game in the world.
Sure. So I was going to ask if there was any kind of menu driven interface. So they just dumped you at a prompt?
And like you would say help, or eventually you learned I think dir worked. So you could see the list of commands that were accessible to you in your home directory and stuff like that. But like, there were some exchange students from, I think, the Philippines who lived in the lounge. Even private schools are underfunded, it turns out, in the US. So the exchange students had to live in what was previously the student lounge on the end of the floor. And they taught me how to use IRC because they were using IRC to talk to family at home because it was cheap.
Sure.
We would do Usenet. I knew how to use Usenet early on, but Archie and Gopher, ironically, were the things that kind of like exposed the power of the internet to you, to me early.
That's interesting because we got our first like kind of permanent, I mean, it was a dial-up connection, but first like full on commercial internet access at my house in 96. And even by then, I think Archie and Gopher I'm sure they were still in use, but like I never came into contact with them. Like they were already kind of in decline at that point, I think.
So they were almost like, it was almost like somebody had said, hey, let's take these BBSs and apply them, make it easier to connect between them.
Is that what those are?
It's basically a menu driven interface. Okay. So you would type Archie and then an IP address or a domain name, and that would point you. And it was usually something really esoteric, like an actual machine name, not just a straight URL. So it would be like vax0506.cincinnati.edu or whatever your thing was, and it was often tied into like mini card catalogs for the library for all of the documents that they had online, so you could kind of drill down by topic. There were searches sometimes. It was a weird interface for like finding information on the web.
All still console based.
Still console based.
Was there any like real meaningful difference between the two protocols or standards?
So, well, the thing was they weren't cross compatible at that point. So in order to you had to find out basically I bought a book at the bookstore of Archie. There was a list of Archie and Gopher servers.
I'm sure that was timely.
Because, well, it actually kind of was, because it's not like anybody was doing a ton with them. And it was kind of hard to add information to them. So like they weren't changing, like it was like the card catalog at your library was changing when somebody would get a new book, but not.
I guess the internet was not quite as active as it is.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I ever found anything useful on either of those. Right. Like,
okay.
But most of my early internet access at that point was like going into Pound Quake or Pound Doom on FNet and like hoping that Romero would come hang out in IRC one afternoon.
You pronounced the pound as pound?
Back then you did.
I always pronounced it as channel.
Oh, wow. No, pound.
Man. Nonsense.
Like I ended up making friends with the Linux admin so I transferred to UT after my first year because I didn't want to pay for Vanderbilt. I didn't want to graduate with $100,000 in debt. And also I almost flunked out because I was playing a lot of Doom.
Yeah.
Full disclosure.
Yes. I get it.
But
I get it.
Yeah.
I can identify.
But so I was using IRC a fair amount. I was using Usenet a fair amount. In order to download stuff from Usenet back then, you would have to Kermit. You'd have to use Kermit or Xcopy or one of those things to like transfer the binary, switch the modem from ASCII to binary mode or switch the terminal from ASCII to binary mode and suck down the binary file. It wasn't anything. I mean, I'm sure if you had faster connections, there was a lot of useful shit on Usenet at that point, but mostly it was just like pictures and this was prior to MP3s or anything like that. So you were downloading MIDI files probably for pirating music.
I'm over here Googling Kermit and Archie and all this stuff as you talk about it and just resisting going off on 18 different tangents.
Yeah, it was a weird, like,
I never knew Kermit was a file transfer protocol. The thing is, I've always heard all these names, I've always heard about Gopher and Kermit and all that stuff, but I never knew exactly what it was.
It was a weird, and also those file transfer protocols and the modems were noisy enough and not very good at error correction at that point. So like if there was a blip on your phone line when you were in the middle of downloading an image file or something, there would just be a corruption
in there.
Yeah, pink line right across the middle of the image.
Sure. God, this reminds me that there was a search engine for Archie called Veronica.
Yep.
That's ridiculous.
That was maybe the advantage of Archie over Gopher when I think about it.
That's ridiculous. The backronym for Veronica is Very Easy Rodent-Oriented Net-Wide Index to Computer Archives.
Because Archie, I think, was a superset of Gopher, right?
I think that's kind of what I'm picking up from this as I quickly skim these Wikipedia pages. Yeah.
Early open source drama where somebody forked the project. There's an RFC for Gopher. And apparently there's still Archie and Gopher sites up. I want to go check that stuff out. I have to go check that stuff out. I'm fascinated. I assume there must be like web-based clients for that stuff at this point. Yeah. So when you log into it with a web-based client, you'll see.
Why would I've literally logged into a bash prompt or it's a Z shell prompt. But as we speak, why would I use a web-based thing when I can actually?
I'm curious if you'll even have a Archie client accessible.
I bet there's something kicking around.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so
let me go to freshports.org and type Archie in and see what I can find. Nothing. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's see.
Get fucked, Archie.
Man, there is a Gopher client.
Okay. The Gopher client probably talks to Archie too, if I had to guess.
Okay. I might have to fiddle around with this a little bit later.
If somebody wants to set up an official TechPod Archie client where we have one level per episode, that would be amazing. I'm just saying that because I don't want to do it.
Real quick, I was just going to ask before we move on. Did those services ever use any kind of like ANSI graphics? Like, I mean, how BBS-ish were they?
So I don't remember. I mean, maybe there were some ASCII graphics on Archie and Gopher logins. There was a lot of that stuff. If you would like telnet into that, like, I feel like that stuff came on more with MUDs.
Okay.
So MUDs were a little bit later.
I mean, multi-user dungeons,
multi-user or MUs, MUD object oriented. So basically, like a MUD is basically like a specialized IRC server that has scripting and stuff so that players can extend it in a lot of cases. And you'd end up with these like, kind of actually they begat things like the people that made Ultima Online started as mud designers. That
makes sense.
Or Origin hired them.
That checks out.
Straight from mud designs, and then they just strapped a UI on top of it.
Ultima Online is just an attempt to make a graphical mud.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Yeah. EverQuest as well.
Sure.
And more so after EverQuest is becoming their own thing, but it was very much like a text. There were combat ones, there were Star Wars ones, there were social ones. Like there was this thing called Lambda Moo that was just a huge. It was a huge user generated. It was maybe the first piece of user generated content I ever saw, actually, when I think about it, because like the makers wrote the initial lobby and made some special areas at the beginning, but then you could just basically put an object in any room. If you get the owner of the room to put an object in it, that object could link you out to anywhere else in the world. And it became this massive just snarl of like there were different areas. There was like, it's what I'm sure Ernie Klein was thinking about when he wrote the descriptions of the metaverse, the Oasis and Ready Player One.
Sure.
Because problems with that book aside, the description of the metaverse that he came up with and that Neil Stephenson came up with in Snow Crash, I think are probably the two key points for me.
Sure. So, all right, don't let me derail this conversation too much, but I mean, I could come up with endless questions about all this stuff. So you were connecting on that Wang remotely, like from your dorm or wherever you were living? Like you weren't having to go into a computer lab to get to this stuff at this point, right?
So if you went in the computer lab, they were connected, but most of the lab machines didn't have the stuff. Like, I don't know that there was a terminal on the lab machines because they were mostly connected to the internet for printing.
So were you running Windows on that 386 then? Or
I was running Windows.
Okay. So like, what was the terminal client situation like in Windows at that point? Like, was it just built into the dialer you were using? Like, I'm thinking back even on like when I got onto BBSs in like probably 94 is when that started. And I don't remember, I remember next to nothing about like, maybe the modem came with some kind of dialer software that had a terminal built into it, I guess. I really don't remember what that software situation was like.
I think that the IT department gave me a floppy disk with the dialer pre-configured to dial the school's modem lines and had a terminal client. And I feel like I probably downloaded a better terminal client at some point in the process of like noodling with all this stuff.
Okay.
Like it's a really, like, thinking back on it, it's really weird because like there wasn't a lot to do. Right. But it was also this big, it was almost like it was a huge puzzle to figure out how all the stuff worked. And there weren't a lot of books at that time. Like I think the Internet for Dummies didn't come out until 94. And that was kind of ironically a big, hey, here's how to use Gopher, here's how to use Archie, here's how to use IRC and like Usenet, and here's all the different things you can do. And oh, by the way, you might want to check out this little thing called Links. It maybe is going to be a big deal one day.
Right.
But that was before PPP and Slip were really used, at least in my experience.
Yeah, so I think we talked about it like maybe when we did the origin story stuff, which has been
probably
almost a long time ago at this point. But like, when we got that first 14.4 modem, it was at least a day, maybe 2 days before I actually successfully dialed and connected anything, because it was like on top of troubleshooting IRQ conflicts or whatever, just to install the card. Once you got in there, then you had to like write the init string to actually properly make it dial something. And it was just,
Yeah. So my guess is that the difference between your first time on the internet and my first time on the internet is when I first got on the internet, it was probably maybe the second time I had heard about it. Okay. And the previous time was like in a Newsweek article about this thing that might be interesting in 10 years.
So you, because you were at a university, you had like a gateway into it. There were people there sort of facilitating it for you. Also, I should clarify that when I was on those BBSs, they had no semblance of access to the internet whatsoever. Those were just tiny little rural town, self-contained bulletin boards.
Yeah. Pirate havens for the was what our pirate and porn were what ours were.
I don't remember Bristol. A lot of piracy on those. There was a decent amount of shareware.
Okay.
I don't remember any like full games being traded. I mean, granted, you were on like, you were on a 14.4 connection. Like you were not really going to be downloading unless you were going to leave something connected overnight.
Yeah, I feel like it would take like an hour per floppy disk basically to copy something on a 14.4.
I'm trying to think. God. Like I used to have all that stuff memorized. Like how long does it take to download a megabyte over a 14.4 connection? How long? What's the transfer speed to a 3.5 floppy versus a 5 1/4? And that stuff's all gone.
Yeah, it's funny now. If something, I had to download it up. I was playing Luigi's Mansion last night. I hadn't touched it in 6 months, and it took 5 minutes to download the patch from Nintendo because Nintendo's but for whatever reason, their shit is always really slow.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is interminable. How do people handle this? Why would anybody do this?
On a, what was it? On a 14.4? Well, I mean, we could do the math, but like, wasn't it like roughly like 1.5 kilobytes a second if you've got kind of full throughput?
Kilobits per second, right?
No. Well, 1.5
14.4
kilobytes.
it's 14.4 divided by 8.
Roughly,
so
roughly.
That's
something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, it was very like 10 minutes per megabyte or something like that. It was incredibly slow. I guess we should jump forward. So we got our first, like I said, our first internet connection in 96, which was a PPP dial-up connection.
Yeah.
Well,
did you do AOL or something, or you were on a local ISP?
Yes, we did have. There was a period of that's right. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, it was kind of BBSs in like 94-ish. And then there was probably a year or something of me daisy chaining AOL free month magazine included CD account deals back to back. I don't know.
Did they not require a credit card for that?
I don't remember how I did that. I do remember like popping multiple AOL trials off and on.
I remember that there was a period of time before credit card processing people were okay with the internet. Like this is post 95 probably, when like if you knew how to generate a fake credit card number that passed the hash of the last 4 digits,
Yikes.
you could basically sign up for free services with relative impunity.
That sounds pretty dangerous these days.
It wasn't a good idea.
Yeah,
but yeah. It was a different time.
Yes, that definitely was. There was every possibility that I kept convincing my parents to let me use different ones of their credit card numbers to sign up for different free trials. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was on AOL for some number of months or something like that, and then I found out about just the open internet and the ISP in the next town over, which had local numbers that we could connect to, had pretty good service, so we got onto that. But did you get online on the actual internet from Windows 3.1 at all? Because it was Windows 95 was out, and like it had its own TCP/IP stack and all that stuff.
So,
did you ever exist in that liminal space where you could get on the internet from Windows 3.1, but you had to kind of make it all work yourself?
So I did that in labs at school for sure. But at that point I was taking CS classes, so I was mostly doing internet from Sun machines running X Windows, and we had Mosaic on those. So you could like that was my first taste of like graphical internet, which wasn't that graphical at the time. My Windows. So I ordered a copy of Trumpet WinSock because they enabled SLIP and PPP on our school ISP at basically like the end in May, right when the term ended, and then by the time August rolled around, we came back. Windows 95 was out. So I ordered the Trumpet WinSock, used it for like a month. I ordered it at the same time I had pre-ordered Windows 95.
Okay.
And then Windows 95 came and all that. I paid $100 for something completely useless.
Oh, wow. I was going to ask how much it was. I was going to say, I bet it wasn't cheap because it was the kind of thing that you couldn't really get anywhere else.
It was a total ripoff because it was all free software bundled up in, because it was like Netscape, Trumpet WinSock, a Usenet client, a mail client.
Wait, were you not buying it from the developer of Trumpet WinSock?
No, because you had to get a CD, and the developer of Trumpet WinSock was just a dude.
Oh wait, was this one of those? This is one of those like sleazy mid-90s bottom feeders that just packaged up other people's free software and sold it to you.
You remember all those books you bought at Costco?
Yeah.
It's like that.
Was that in fact legal? I don't know. I guess software licenses were not as buttoned up back then as they are now.
I think as long as they I can't imagine it was illegal. Actually, they would have gotten stopped.
I mean, this is going off on another tangent, but I'm trying to remember what happened remember the third-party collections of Doom wads that you could buy at Walmart?
Oh yeah.
Like, what happened with that? Like, wasn't there some legal action at some point?
Well, Q was the one who published a bunch of those, and they were an imprint of somebody big like Wiley or something. So they would have not messed that up, I would think.
Okay.
Those Doomwad books were amazing. Like I have a Doomwad CD with the Aliens.
Right. Like even in that case, they were just going online and downloading a bunch of other people's free work and selling it to you on a disc, man.
It's data, man. It's information wants to be free, Brad. Right, why do you got to bring the man into this?
Can't copyright zeros and ones.
It turns out, actually.
Yeah. So, okay. So I missed that whole weird Windows 3.1 phase of internet access. Like it
was not great.
Yeah. I'm sure it was not.
It was like I mostly just ran everything in terminal because it was so janky.
Yeah.
Like, because also, like at that point, I guess until Netscape came out and we started getting tables and progressive image loads, like it took so long to load any pictures. You were better off just looking at the text page and links. And
sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay, so you got on AOL.
Yeah, I don't remember much about it, honestly.
Like, you were probably pretty stoked for the internet, though.
Oh, right? Yeah. It was blew by. I mean, even BBS's blew my mind. Like, just the idea of typing into a computer and somebody else being able to see it somewhere else in your town was like fucking mind blowing to me.
There were definitely moments when people would come in. So we had everybody, almost every room on our floor had a computer. Like one of the people that lived in the room had a computer. So there was a pretty hefty trade in software walking up and down the halls when I was a freshman.
Oh, sure.
And as a result, like most people were playing games or like writing papers. Every once in a while, people would come in and just see text scrolling on the screen of my computer, and they'd be like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's some IRC channel. I don't know. They're talking about how much Will Wheaton sucks or something." And
common topic back then.
Yeah. I mean, these were the important things back then. But yeah, it was. There was always a moment of like, well, how are you seeing what they're saying on their computers? Because nobody really got networks at that time.
Right.
Like it was a weird concept.
Totally. Like Legend of the Red Dragon on a BBS was probably my first exposure to some kind of online multiplayer game.
I don't even know what that is. What is that?
Oh my God, dude, should Google. Let me see if surely there is a way to play Legend of the Red Dragon, or Lord, as we usually refer to it at the time. Apparently there is a Jet Li film of the same name, so finding the BBS door game may be a little bit tough. It was just a menu driven, like text based kind of medieval sword and sorcery RPG.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I don't remember much at all. Let's see. Here we go. Looks like you can play it on the web. It was very text based. It was very just like you were standing in a wood. There is an imp here. What do you do? And there was just kind of menu of like swing sword. Or
it was multiplayer.
Well, I don't remember how you interacted with it. You may actually not have interacted with people now that I think about it. Like there may have been some very, very limited interaction with other players, but it actually, maybe it was just a kind of single player thing. Anyway, yes, there are places to play that on the web. There's on lord.stabs.org. There is one person playing Lord right now. Anyway, I'm rambling here, but like like I said, the
stabs. That's a good
point
name.
is like just like the idea of, like you said, the idea of doing something on a computer and somebody else on a different computer somewhere else seeing that reflected on their end was just like completely like head explode, right?
Yeah.
I found I randomly happened on the episode of the Computer Chronicles where they had a guy from Sierra showing off the Sierra network. And he was showing like, here's how you play cribbage against somebody in, Dubai or whatever, like
that's what became one, right?
I think that's right. Also, I'm pretty sure he was calling it the Sierra Network at the time, but I feel like I remember it being called the Entertainment Network for a while.
Oh yeah, 10.
Yeah. Anyway,
well, there were a bunch of those. Like Yahoo Games was one,
right?
The Microsoft X Zone or Microsoft Zone, whatever that was.
I'm sure CompuServe had a similar thing.
Well, so the other weird thing about a lot of those early dial-in services, they were basing everything on the Arthur C. Clarke idea that you were going to pay by the minute or by the hour for that stuff. Oof. So like
that's right.
Yeah. Like if you played the wrong game on CompuServe, you could rack up a fairly substantial bill.
Sure.
It was a weird. I mean, in retrospect, maybe charging for shit early on was the right idea, but anyway, that stuff was all really weird. And then we got PPP access.
Yeah. So that's what I was working up to asking you about that's what our first proper actual dial-up connection was a PPP connection. Do you have any recollection of like the functional difference between PPP and SLIP?
It was just different. It was just different protocols.
It was just whatever
your ISP supported.
Just a different dial-up standard. Like it didn't actually change the nature of your internet access or anything like that.
No, it was just a tunnel across a modem.
I see.
Either way, and the question was which hardware. I feel like it was a hardware on the modem side or on the router side as to which one was going to be supported.
Okay,
but I don't know for sure.
Got it.
Yeah, I didn't. It wasn't. my school supported PPP. I don't think I ever actually saw a slip. Maybe in May before we might have been on slip before. I know PPP was the later protocol.
Okay.
Slip was
I always had it in my mind that it was better somehow, but I don't know where I got that impression.
I feel like on Slip you had to always log in with a terminal or set up a script to do that. In PPP, like you do that in the like it was built into the transmission.
Yeah, like I remember Windows 95 had like pretty decent built-in setup stuff for a PPP connection.
Yeah, I know that when we had the Slip connection, it may have just been because I didn't figure out the scripting to do it automatically, but I had to manually log in. I dialed in, then you'd log in, then the terminal window would go away, and then you'd have the direct connection.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
After we got that connection, I pretty quickly found my way onto first Usenet for a few months, and then that led me to IRC, and then that was just kind of the end of everything. But then I spent all of my time doing that.
Yeah, it was funny. Like after Doom, so Doom came out the fall. The Doom shareware came out in December, right around finals time, which was deleterious to the quality of my grades.
Yeah.
And I've told the story before. My roommate worked in the computer lab, so we would go down or not. One of the guys in my floor worked in the computer lab. We'd go down and play Doom after the computer lab closed at midnight. And after that, like that's when, like sometime between then and the fall of 95 or winter of 95, when Quake Test came out, is when like Scary's Quakeholio, which became Shack News, and Redwood Stomp.
Blues
News. The URL was redwood.stomp.com, but I think he had a name for it. It was Redwood's
right. It was
site,
you're
Quake
right.
site or something. And Blues News, which is still like Blues News is still around doing Blues News stuff.
I don't. Whatever. If the dude is happy, then more power to him. I don't understand how Blues News has not changed in like 20 plus years.
Look, it's like the coelacanth. It's a living reminder of a time gone past.
I mean, I'm talking like literal site design. Like it's the same. It is the same site design as it had when I was in college around the turn of the century. But modern content, like I'm looking at updates from today, Saturday, July 18th, as we record this. There are posts about a Ghost Recon Breakpoint free weekend, a Remnant from the Ashes DLC release, like coverage of modern games on a site that hasn't changed in over 20 years.
What does Blues News think about Dark Souls? Right. Like
it's wild to me. It's cool. It's I'm not trying to knock it. Like I think it's really fascinating, but I just don't know what the nature of this site. And here's Last of Us Part 2 sales figures. Anyway.
Well, but I mean, the thing that was weird about that time was that the people that were into the emerging first person shooter scene centered around id mostly, and a little bit of Epic at that point, but mostly id at that point.
Yeah.
Like they were the only ones that were producing regular content for the internet early on.
Sure.
Like there were some like Linux people, but like Slashdot wasn't around at that point.
Like those were early blogs basically. And then to be fair, like Quake was an industry unto itself basically. Like the amount of stuff happening around that game was completely, like looking back on it now, completely insane.
Well,
from the first mods, I mean, like Doom had very rudimentary modding support, but in terms of like actual new game modes being created, like it was kind of the first place that multiplayer mods happened, like player skins came from there. It's not like there was a constant churn. This is hard to understand now, but like, it's not like there was a new game coming out every week. There were definitely new games coming out every week, but there weren't new games like Doom coming out every week. Right.
So like if you wanted to keep playing new stuff that was like Doom, you were scouring Usenet groups and downloading mods and going to like Stomped and downloading whatever the new mod that was on the popular list that week was.
Right. Like you remember? Go ahead.
Oh no.
Do you remember playing Capture the Flag in Quake for the first time? Like that was a completely mind-blowing thing.
Oh yeah. Like that one, like the even the stuff like the people who downloaded when the 3D accelerators came out, the people who revised the map so that you could see through the water,
transparent water, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But there was a whole so Carmack and the id folks were posting like dev updates live, like blog posts, but they were putting them in their plan files.
Oh man, I had no prior to that, I had no idea what a plan file was.
Yeah, nobody used, I mean, okay, nerds used plan files like that. And it was a lot of like, if you were in the CS department at a university, there was a lot of like jokes going back and forth where you would burn somebody in your plan file and like, you know, people would have to figure out who it was that got burned, and then you'd burn that person back in your plan file. And it was just, you know, dipshit 20-year-old nonsense.
Corny software developer humor.
Yeah.
I have to assume the plan file's original purpose was from like the university setting, right? Where any kind of like research was probably going on and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure it was a way to.
It was the same as like your AIM status message or what became Twitter, right?
Right.
Like,
right. You finger somebody's account and you get their plan back.
Yeah. Problematic language, but okay. And so Carmack started updating there, then all the id folks did, and then all the like the people in the studios that spun off or were lightly affiliated with id started doing that. And it ended up being this whole like I think Blue or Redwood had a plan viewer.
Yeah, I forget, one of those sites started aggregating the plan files.
Yeah, so you didn't have to actually terminal in to the plan file to the plan servers and finger John C at idsoftware.com.
Yep.
And like it honestly, those guys spawned a lot of what is now games journalism. Like without I think that's why all the bad stuff happens in games before it happens anywhere else, is because that online games journalism stuff has been going on for 5 years more than like that was before CNN had a website.
Yes.
Right. Like,
yes, you're right. It is a space that is very consistently ahead of its time in a lot of ways.
And it is, I think, specifically because it literally started 4 or 5 years before anybody else. Anyway.
Sure. But it's, you know, it's also a very tech savvy scene that is like plugged into emerging technologies and stuff like that.
But also it shaped the way people cover games and the way people expect games to be covered and the way companies approach, you know, journalists who are covering their products. So
yes.
Anyway, that's that's kind of off topic, but
well, like that stuff was happening on the web. And like I was on Usenet at the same time, where a lot of like kind of the 96, 97 time frame, like a lot of like late breaking news was being passed around there. And then that stuff trickled down to IRC. Like that's why.
Yeah. No.
That's why I appreciate Google archiving pretty much all of Usenet, because you can still go back and find all of your 25-year-old Usenet posts. Like when I breathlessly went on probably alt.games.Final Fantasy because some Japanese magazine had reported that Square was moving Final Fantasy VII to the PlayStation and nobody believed it.
Wow.
And I ran on there. I was just like, have you heard about this? What the fuck?
So it's funny. I was spending a lot of time in IRC at that point.
Yeah.
So I was seeing like every once in a while. I think I was in Pound Quake one time.
Is that FNet?
FNet, yeah.
Like it's really sad to me that I'm starting to forget a lot of these details. But like, if I thought about it really hard, we could probably spend a whole episode just talking about IRC and all the weird idiosyncrasies of that service and like server splits and channel takeovers and stuff like that.
God. Yeah. I remember one time I ended up with an op on a big IRC channel because of a horrible net split. And I mean, this is also a time when there were only a handful of routers that could route traffic across the country. So it's not like now where it's an actual web, but it was like May East and May West. And that's where May East is where all the traffic coming from Europe came in. And May West was where all the traffic coming from the Pacific came in. And if one of those had problems, then everything would go to shit. And they had problems all the time because we were really bad at routing back then.
Yeah.
So like if an IRC net split happened, whoever got back into the channel first on one of the splits would have mod and op powers.
Have ops, yeah. Plus, like for you, if you never used IRC before, you basically set there's a bunch of modes you can set on users. So like if you set somebody +O, then they're an op in the channel, then they've got all kinds of like banning and kicking powers. Like
they're basically owners. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what else there
were mod powers +X and stuff like that. There were like you could mute people who didn't have the ability to speak.
You basically could set people. I forget what the mode was, but yeah, you could set people so they could talk, and then anybody who didn't have that flag set couldn't talk.
Well, there were like the whole point of it was you had to defend your territory,
right?
Like in a fucking gang war or something.
That's totally where I'm going with this. Is that like as distressing as it was at the time? I don't know about you, but did you ever hang out in any channels enough to become like enough of a regular that you were like permanently had permanent ops in there and stuff like that?
I didn't ever have ops, and I had ops in smaller channels. And when we were doing like competitive, when I was playing competitive Quake, then like I had ops in channels that were related to that, but it wasn't like, they weren't like high traffic channels.
No. I wasn't either. Like the channel vid games on FNet is where I kind of got my start, and like that's how I have a job now.
Was that Andy Eddy? Wasn't Andy Eddy up on that? He was active there, I think.
He might have been in there a little bit. Or that might have been before my time. Like I showed up in there like 96, 97.
Okay.
And by then it was like kind of the second generation of EGM and the Ziff Davis mags. Like a bunch of the guys from those places were in there, and there were like random people from different game developers in there and stuff like that. It's just, it was a great networking opportunity, but that was like, I don't know, 30, 40 people at a time or something like that. But what I was going to say was like, as distressing as it was when like a split would happen and some asshole would come in and take the channel over, like it was almost like an emergent online, it was like a game. It was totally like you said, like a turf war of like people doing end runs around each other, trying to get back in there. There was like social engineering involved to you go in there and like impersonate other people to try to get the usurpers to trust you and all kinds of shit like that. It was wild.
Because like the thing to remember about IRC is back then, at least, you didn't actually log in. You just put what your name was.
Right. Your name could be anything as long as nobody else on that server or on that network was using it.
Yeah. I mean, eventually they added authentication and stuff like that for channel owners and things like that.
Yeah.
But like you had to run a network of bots that would sit and maintain the mod and op in the channel for you when you were offline.
Get your egg drop going.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Got to get that egg drop. That's why those shell accounts, those Unix shell accounts were so valuable, because you could run stuff that stayed online all the time.
Oh, sure.
And the university's Unix accounts, Unix machines were pretty reliable compared to like whatever else was running.
Yeah.
So yeah, that stuff was weird.
Like every time I come into contact with IRC now, which is almost never, but I'm kind of blown away at how like open and kind of raw the whole thing is. Like, for example, whenever you join a channel on IRC, like it just flat out prints your IP right behind your username. Right there in the open channel for everybody to see, you know?
Well, IPs aren't private, right?
Well, no, obviously there are ways to get them, but like it just makes me think about stuff like Discord and similar services these days that obfuscate so much of that stuff. Like there is so little, I guess I would say like potential for fuckery there. You know what I mean? Like everything is a walled garden. Everything is very manicured and like well considered for the most part. Like you've got pretty limited options. Whereas like back in the day, it was just a protocol designed by engineers and nerds. You know, they weren't thinking about usability. They were just thinking about exposing as many options as they could. Well, and there were a lot of ways to exploit that and do a lot of really weird stuff.
I mean, it's definitely indicative of the early time when no one considered bad actors on the internet. Like the whole net split thing was one of the first examples of that. People posting viruses and Usenet binaries and stuff like that was not that much after that. And it was a weird time.
Yeah, it was fun though.
I mean, the thing is, the stakes were really low because it's not like your bank account was tied to anything.
Yes.
So if you lost your handle on IRC on FNet, who fucking cared? You just made another one.
So eventually the asshole or the attacker would get bored and go do something else. And then you would just show back up and take your nick back.
Yeah. Well, and their whole point, a lot of times the point was, hey, you need to have better security, dumbass.
Right.
You know, that was how the graybeards used to teach the people who ruined the internet what they were doing wrong.
Yeah. So thinking back in my mind, it was that late 90s into kind of turn of the century era that was the sort of Wild West period. And then like, for example, if I look back at my Amazon account, like my first Amazon purchase was in 2001 and social media started coming about in a major way, probably 04, 05, 06.
How do you see your first Amazon purchase?
It's all in the history. Like you can just go into the order history.
Scroll back.
Maybe not on the app. I don't know if they expose it all in there, but on the website, you absolutely can.
Holy crap. Hold on.
Granted, that was college textbooks. Like that's when I was in college. And if you remember, like this is really hard to remember at this point, but Amazon was a bookseller first, right? So that's why. That's probably why I have Amazon purchases that far back, is because they primarily sold books back then, and I needed textbooks, so I got some of them there. Anyway, point being, like the point I'm trying to make is like Amazon is a major force still, you know, like Facebook obviously is gigantic, and like all of that stuff was coming about in the 2002 to 5-ish time frame, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the modern web starts kind of with Google, I think.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's another one, of course.
Because I feel like
early search engines is like a whole other tangent to go off on. But yeah, like I mean, once Google came about, you were not touching Alta Vista or Ask Jeeves or any of that stuff.
Do you remember Metacrawler?
Vaguely, yes.
It searched Lycos and Alta Vista and Jeeves and all the other search engines.
I was an Alta Vista guy primarily until Google came about and destroyed all the other search engines.
I just found my first Amazon order.
Wow. What do you got?
It was on January 14th, 1999.
Oh, wow.
It was $80, 3 items.
Okay.
A copy of The Truman Show on DVD.
Okay.
A copy of Armageddon on DVD.
Got it.
And a pre-order of the BOS Bible written by Scott Hacker, who's now a friend, which is a delight.
BOS? B-E.
Yeah,
like that BOS. Yes.
BOS.
Yes.
Which didn't arrive until May. So
let's see. Mine is a bunch of books for the Japanese literature class I was taking, and a copy of Black and White for PC.
Nice, that's a good one.
But those are my 2001 orders.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah, like you said, it was like Google, Amazon, Facebook, all the companies that define the internet now started coming about in the early 21st century. Which was kind of.
I mean, Microsoft and Apple were around prior to that.
But Microsoft is like those are companies from the 70s, though. You know, those were companies that existed in a prior era that transitioned into internet businesses. But like the companies that exist because of the internet happened around that time, and like that to me, that's the end of that really wild west open era of the internet, and when things started getting a little more buttoned up.
There was a moment, I don't know if it might have been too early for you, but Yahoo, when it started, was like a search engine, but it was all human curated. I don't know if people realize that.
Huh. I don't think I knew. Like, I definitely used Yahoo, but I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, it was literally people would submit your website to Yahoo. A person would go look at it and then they would figure out what slot to put it in.
Huh.
So like the results were really good until it got to the point that they couldn't keep up anymore. And then they were not good anymore.
Sure.
It was just all old.
I mean, that's really telling of how much content there was on the internet back then.
I mean, it really was. Like, it was hard to find. It was really profoundly unuseful until Google came around.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, if you wanted to do computer shit, or you wanted to look up stuff about video games, or you wanted to find out how to do something on Unix, it was great for that.
Yeah. I thought Google was the best thing ever for a number of years. And then I went and worked at a website that depended entirely on traffic from Google to generate ad revenue.
Yeah.
And then the first time that relationship went bad in some way, I was like, maybe they have too much power.
Who knew?
And it was too late.
Yeah. Oh, so, well.
Yeah, here we are.
Who knew that finding porn on the website was going to be the thing that gave Google on the internet was going to be the thing that gave Google infinite power.
Yeah.
On that cheery note.
Oh, wow, man. I'm sitting here looking. I've totally got the mailing address from the dorm I lived in college on this order.
I had a house
almost
then.
20 years old. Man, that's wild.
That was where I bought my first house.
God, we didn't even get into the fact that when I went to college, I went to a very engineering-oriented school.
Like, did you have internet in the dorm? Like,
so that's where I'm going with this. I went to a school that was known for, I had a massive computer science program, like huge engineering school. I got put in one of the 3 remaining dorms on campus that was not wired for Ethernet.
Oh my God.
So I had a dial-up account I could use for my dorm, or I could go to the computer lab.
Nope.
I rapidly got myself moved to a dorm with Ethernet as fast as I could. It took a semester or two.
I was going to say, they wired the dorms for Ethernet the semester after I moved out.
Oh no.
I was working then, so I had money, and I was like, I'm going to get a 1-bedroom apartment where I can like not have to deal with assholes, because UT at the time didn't have any single, solo dorms, and I'd had a series of terrible roommates, and I almost moved back because of the internet access.
Yeah, totally.
I didn't yeah.
Like I felt I felt wronged when I got to school and found out I didn't have any kind of fast internet. I was like, that was half the reason for going to college. What the fuck?
Yeah. What am I paying for this for?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the early internet.
It's a fun time.
It was like, in terms of things I learned about I learned more on the day-to-day, and honestly, like the following the plant files, and that's where I learned about 3D accelerators. And that was what my first writing job was, writing about 3D accelerators.
Totally. Like so, I was kind of the same as you. I was like a solid B plus student in college because I did pretty much the minimum I could get away with to spend the rest of my time messing with computer stuff and playing games and getting up to other nonsense. But I started reviewing video games while I was still in school. Like that time was well spent in one way or another.
The amount of time I spent trying to learn how to make a computer faster to play Quake better, and like reading SIGGRAPH papers, I remember reading SIGGRAPH papers to try to decode Carmack plan file updates.
Sure.
And like as a result, I learned a lot about how 3D accelerators worked and was able to write reviews of them.
Yes.
And
wondering what NURBS meant led to developing a lot of real world job skills.
Yeah. Why did this Power VR card I bought for $50 from some guy down the hall make cracks in Quake? Why are there holes in the walls in Quake all of a sudden that are obviously not supposed to be there?
Yes.
It was a weird time.
Curved surfaces, you can't do that.
How do benchmarks work?
Yeah.
Oh God, curved surfaces. Jesus, I forgot about that.
Yep.
The things we couldn't do.
Yeah.
I think that's as good a place as any to wrap up.
That was a fun trip down memory lane.
Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. And if you like this kind of conversation and more, you should consider backing the Patreon at patreon.com/techpod. In the Patreon Discord, which you get access to at the $2 level and above, you have access to such channels as old ass computers, just network things, code.
It's a problem that Discord insists on inserting hyphens into every space.
Yeah.
Because that should be old -ass space computers.
That's true.
Some people have read it as old space
ass computers.
-computers. Yes, old ass computers as opposed to old ass computers.
Is an ass computer?
I couldn't tell you.
A computer that's shaped like an ass, or a computer that goes in your ass?
I don't have a good answer for that.
Okay.
It's just an unfortunate name that I think we're stuck with now.
As always, thank you so much to all of our patrons who help support the show.
Totally. I get so much out of reading those conversations every week.
It is a genuine joy every day to fire up the Discord and see what people are talking about and learn some new stuff.
Yeah. I have to, I think we've been talking about it obviously in the intro the last couple of weeks, but please keep the desk pictures coming. I have to salute all the nice, tidy desk photography that's happening in there. I'm aiming to get my desk cleaned up and contribute myself, but I can't get enough of seeing people's setups, which is probably sad, but whatever.
I guarantee you that your desk was cleaner right now than mine was 7 minutes after I finished cleaning my desk.
Here's the extent of the...
Oh, goddamn, Brad.
The extent of the mess.
Just post the picture. Oh, man, you have those Cambridge Soundworks speakers. Those speakers are so good.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, they don't make speakers like that anymore.
Do you back me on this?
Yeah, dude, I'm 100% with you on the Cambridge Soundworks.
These are 20-year-old speakers, and people mock me for having them, but it's not like speakers go bad or something. Like good speakers are good speakers.
I wish I still had my Altic Lansing ACS, the ones that Redwood recommended. There were two speakers that were hot in the Quake scene in 1999.
The Cambridge Soundworks Cubes and the Altic Lansing.
Yeah, the Altic Lansings had a wooden subwoofer, so I bought the Altic Lansings. They were great.
That's good speakers. Hold up, man. These things still sound great.
Very special thanks to our executive producer level patrons, David Allen, Kurt Brownwich, Jacob Chappell, and Andrew Cotton. You guys are amazing. But everybody who supports, we appreciate everybody who supports the Tech Pod. And
you have unassailable taste in podcasts, I would like to say.
So this is definitely the second best podcast that either of us are on, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your support. You can find out more about the podcast at techpod.content.town. And if you can't support the Patreon, that's fine. We love you anyway.
Thanks for listening.
Just tell your friends.
Yeah.
I love seeing people post about the podcast on Twitter. It's always nice to see like somebody saying something.
Spreading the word helps too, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, Brad, you pointed this out before the show, but this episode, sometime between now and when this episode is done, we're gonna have 500,000 downloads of the Tech Pod.
Yeah, that's 500,000.
500,000, hopefully satisfied customers.
Yeah, that's a lot of downloads. I feel flattered and gratified, but also plenty of imposter syndrome there. Like, wow, people really want to listen to this? Okay.
No, sure. Look, we're providing a valuable service in these dark times.
I guess so.
Everybody take care of yourself, wear masks. Don't go out if you don't have to.
Yes, be safe, please.
And if you're out of the U.S., then congratulations, because nice job.
At least we know somebody can pull it off.
Yeah. Have a great week. We'll see you all next week. Thanks for listening.